Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to discuss how to analyze a food web. You have to be able in fifth grade science in North Carolina to look at an organism on a food web and decide what will happen to the rest of the ecosystem if that organism's numbers increase or decrease. So you're going to take some time to practice some of these. And so let's just do the first one together, and I'll give you some tips and strategies for how to work this out. All right, so on this first page that you can see, it says if this population increases. So what I did was I went over to my notebook paper and I just wrote down bass with a plus sign. That's to help me in my head remember that we're getting more bass. Now, the next thing that you need to know about this food web is you need to know that the arrows are what shows how the energy flows. Or in an easier term, when you're analyzing this, the arrows point to the eater. You got that? The arrow points to the eater. And so if the number of striped bass increases, this striped bass is the eater for the horseshoe crabs, right? You can see the energy from the horseshoe crab flows into the striped bass. So if the striped bass population increases, then I'm thinking that that would mean there would be a lot of striped bass, right? And so then I think that the horseshoe crabs would be the ones that would decrease. So I'm going to put horseshoe crab right here because you have so many of, if you have an increased amount of striped bass, right, then that means that you're going to have less of these. Now, the next step, and I can't see anything else that is directly affected by the striped bass because it looks like their diet is mostly horseshoe crabs. But here's where it gets a little more tricky. Now you know that the horseshoe crabs, right, those are the ones that are going to decrease. So what that means is there won't be as many horseshoe crabs to eat the things that the horseshoe crab eats. So the horseshoe crab, right? The arrow points to the eater. The horseshoe crab is the eater. So if the horseshoe crab decreases, right, that means there'll be less of them. So then what that means after that is that the razor clam will increase, right? If you have more of these, then you'll have less of these. And ultimately, because there are fewer of these predators, then you're going to have more razor clams. So the way that looks on your paper is just to come over here to the increase again and say that the razor clams will increase. And then you can skip the paper part if you want to, but I like to write it down because then it helps me write it in the paper, into the document easier. So I know if the striped bass increases, horseshoe crabs will decrease. And then over here, and notice I put text boxes in there for you so you can type in them, and the razor clams will increase. Now, is there anything else that would increase because of this? All right. No, except the other things that might decrease, if there's too many striped bass, do you see that right there? Then that means that sanderling and grackle, right, they're the eaters of the horseshoe crabs too. So honestly, the sanderling and grackle populations could go down too. So I'm going to put grackle decrease and sanderling decrease. Now, as you're doing this, it might be easier to have a friend to work with. You will be responsible for both of you working on your on your own document. You each have to do your own document, but you can totally work with a partner because it will be easier to discuss. Let's do a second one together. Let's talk about the plankton. All right, so right here is the plankton. And on my paper, just to help me think it through, and remember, it told me on the document that the plankton would increase. So plus for plankton, I'm not showing you, plus for plankton, minus and plus. So we're looking for all the things that would decrease if the plankton increases. Now, wait a minute. Plankton, if it increases, right, then that means there's more food for the razor clams. So that means the razor clams would also increase. So I'm going to go back and write that down. Razor clam. Now, do you guys see what I mean there? If I have a whole bunch of plankton, that means the razor clams have lots of food. And if the razor clams have lots of food, then that means the diamondback turtle will also increase because it will have lots of food. More of the producer means more of the razor clam, which also means more of the diamondback turtle. So I think what I'm going to do is just start typing them right in there. Razor clam, diamondback turtle. There'll be more of them. All right. And if there's more of the razor clams, that would also mean there's more horseshoe crabs. Let's make that diamondback go together. That means more horseshoe crabs. All right, now if there's more horseshoe crabs, then that would then mean more loggerhead turtles. All right, now if there are more horseshoe crabs, then that means the striped bass are the eater of them. They would have a greater population. There'd be more sanderlings and more grackles. Oh, wait. So I'm wondering if from doing this, we can get the idea, right, that everything increases when you increase the producers. And also sanderlings. And also grackles. All right. But then ultimately, guys, when the loggerhead turtles get to be too many, then it will go back down and everything would then decrease again. But it's pretty safe to say that when you have something at the bottom of the food chain increasing, it can increase everything all the way back up. All right. And now I might take my little guy right here, my text box. And I'm probably just going to make the writing a little bit smaller so that it fits better. Good. All right. So I don't see anything that would decrease as a result of plankton increasing. All right, let's try the grackle. All right, so here's the grackle. And what eats the grackle? Oh, so the grackle, if it increases, that means, oh, no, this is the grackle eats that. So if there are too many grackles, right? The grackle is the eater because the arrow points to the eater. If there are too many grackles, then there wouldn't be very many horseshoe crabs and they would decrease. Wait a minute, I'm putting that in the wrong place. Sorry, guys. Let me move that down to the grackle one. There. All right. And then if the horseshoe crab decreases, then that means the sanderling population and the striped bass population would also decrease too. So this increase means then that everything else could decrease. All of those guys could decrease because they all depend on the horseshoe crab. So if there are too many grackles, then the horseshoe crab could decrease. And then everything that eats the horseshoe crab could decrease too. So that would put the striped bass as a decrease, and it could put the sanderling as a decrease and the loggerhead turtle. Now, is there anything that would increase? All right, so wait, this increases, right? So then there wouldn't be enough of these, but then wait, the razor clams would increase. Does that make sense? Because if the horseshoe crab eats the razor clams and there aren't as many horseshoe crabs, then the razor clams would increase. All right, so you can see it's kind of tricky to think these through, but you totally 100% can do it. Let's do the last one together and then you will have the whole first page done. All right, so let's talk about loggerhead turtle is increasing. So it's a plus right there, increase. All right, the loggerhead turtle is increasing. So if there's more loggerhead turtles, then they will eat up the crabs, or they will eat up the horseshoe crabs. So the horseshoe crabs will decrease. All right. And if the horseshoe crabs decrease, then the striped bass, sanderling, and grackle won't have anything to eat. So they're going to so then they're going to decrease too. So the horseshoe crabs increase, then that means a decrease in the crabs, yeah, and the striped bass, and the sanderling, and the grackle birds. Now, what would increase? All of these guys decrease, so that means there would be more razor clams and also more diamondback turtles, because the diamondback turtles eat the razor clams. I probably should put diamondback, yeah. Razor clams and diamondback. All right, so you've seen me give you an example. It's just a matter of thinking it through. Remember that the arrow points to the eater. Say that out loud. The arrow points to the eater. The arrow points to the eater. So if you keep that in mind as you analyze your food webs to find out what populations will increase and what populations will decrease as a result of your population increasing or decreasing, then you should be pretty good. All right, so just notice that sometimes I have the same exact sheet, but instead I have decrease instead of increase. Increases, it's the same food web, but then I said things decrease versus increase. So don't be worried about that, because remember, different things will happen to the same food web. Now, it's really important to just remember that so many things are affected when any one thing happens. And that's sort of the point of this whole lesson. I want you to stretch your brain, analyze your food webs, talk with the partner, and you guys can have the same answers, but you both have to do your own work. This is for a grade. By the end of the week, I want you to have every single thing done, all 10 of them. All right. And then that's about it for now. So thank you for your time. Be good for your sub. I love you and I miss you, and I'll see you soon.